The sixth day of Donald Trump's hush money trial began with a contempt hearing to determine whether the former president should be fined for attacking witnesses on social media in direct violation of a gag order imposed by Judge Juan Merchan. Prosecutors opened the hearing asking the judge to impose the maximum fine of $1,000 for each of the 10 alleged violations. They also asked Judge Merchan to warn Trump about the possibility of jail time. This is prosecutor Chris Conroy. We are not yet seeking an incarceratory penalty. The defendant seems to be angling for that. Conroy added that the court should warn the defendant that this conduct will not be tolerated and remind him that incarceration is an option should it be necessary. This was the response from Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche. There was absolutely no willful violation of the gag order in the 10 posts that the prosecution just discussed. Those comments were in direct response to comments made by these witnesses, not about these criminal proceedings, Your Honor. When Judge Merchan pressed Mr. Blanche on what specific attacks Trump was responding to, Blanche struggled to answer, which led the judge to say, I have asked you 8 or 9 times to show me the exact posts that Trump was responding to, and you have been unable to do that even once. Blanche's response, President Trump is being very careful to comply with Your Honor's rules. Judge Merchan, you, Mr. Blanche, you are losing all credibility. I have to tell you that right now. Joining me now, Duncan Levin, former assistant U.S. attorney with the Manhattan DA's office, and Joyce Vance, former U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Alabama. Thank you both for being here. Joyce, what are the implications of losing the confidence of the judge in like 48 hours?
So, yeah, I mean, it's never a good thing, right, Alex? I think that we're all trying to find different ways to express the fact that this is the worst development for Donald Trump's lawyers this early in the trial, and their client has forced it upon them. If Donald Trump were a normal defendant, his lawyers would have taken him out of the courtroom, sat him down, and had a meeting with him where they would have said to him, we cannot defend you if you continue to do this. They may well have had that conversation because Trump's posts on Truth Social tonight have involved attacks on the judge, attacks on Alvin Bragg, the district attorney, but he seems to have stopped talking, at least for the moment, about witnesses. But frankly, it's too late. The judge, I think, is slow to anger. This is a very good judge, a judge who has good control in the courtroom. The fact that he had this level of response to Todd Blanche's attempt to justify Trump's conduct does not bode well for the defense going forward.
Yeah, what does it say about the defense's broader strategy here? We knew this gag order hearing was coming, and this is the best the defense could come up with. Donald Trump is trying really hard to obey your orders when quite obviously he's not.
Well, I don't think they're arguing to the judge as much as they're putting on a show for their own client. I mean, they're making an argument that is not an argument that they know is the winning argument, and this could not have gone any worse for them today, and they had to expect that. If they really wanted to win the argument, they would have said, you know, he went past the line or went up to the line and he's sorry and he won't do it again, and it would have ended right there. But he's making this argument, which is a political argument, and I think as a result of it, this notion of losing credibility with the judge this early in the case is a serious problem, and it's costing them in real-world ways. For example, they're not getting to see who the next witness is for the next day, and that's the kind of preparation that lawyers do when they're on trial. They spend all night prepping for the next day's witness. If they don't know who it is, that's the kind of thing that's going to trip them up and really harm Mr. Trump at the end of the day.
You know, I was also struck, as I know many people were, Joyce, about the contention from the prosecution that Donald Trump is angling maybe to be incarcerated here. Can you talk to that and how feasible that suggestion sounds to you?
Right. So, you know, with Donald Trump, who fundraises every time a judge rules against him, every time he's indicted, I think we can't reject that notion out of hand. The reality of Donald Trump losing even more control, you know, he's struggling to stay in a courtroom without standing up and trying to leave, complaining about the temperature. I think even a brief stay in one of the holding cells in the courthouse would be very difficult for him. Nonetheless, there may be some political appeal to him. His base, you know, there have not exactly been large supportive rallies for him outside of the courthouse. Perhaps this would be something that he would view as rallying the base. But the reality is that for so many Americans who have Trump fatigue at this point, the spectacle of watching the former president go into custody might finally be that bridge too far.
Yeah, I'm with Joyce on the utility of, an hour or two in a holding cell for Donald Trump as a matter of stoking political grievance. But I don't know. That just seems like a very, very difficult decision for the judge to make.
Well, I think what's much more likely to happen is that the judge is going to impose the fine that the prosecutors are going to ask for. Remember, $1,000 is the maximum that he can get. It's nothing. It's a drop in the bucket for him, obviously. So I think that $1,000 fine for him is worth $1 million ad that he could put on TV. What he could do fundraising off of $1,000 fine from Judge Merchan in this case to say that he is being silenced and fined, and they are trying to suppress his right to speak, and they don't want him to become president. He is going to use this for all it's worth. So I think whether it's a few hours in a holding cell or a few $1,000s fine, I think he is going to use this for all it's worth. And I think that's the reason you're seeing more posts coming out tonight. He's angling for a fight. He is not shying away from it. And he's basically putting the judge in a corner where there's really nothing else that he can do.